As we begin to talk about this weekend, something rose in my heart, a godly legacy. One of the reasons is my earthly father, Gene, who you'll hear from in the morning. It's been an honor to grow up under him. I almost think sometimes it's unfair that you look at life and you almost can think, well, seemingly some people get lucky, some don't, and you just got to deal with it. But I believe when you know God, it doesn't matter what family you were born in, what's been going on. The moment you connect with God, all things change. And you don't have to be a victim. You don't have to think, well, I didn't get that opportunity, but I did. I had an opportunity to grow up in a home. I was born in 1965. And my father got saved before I was born, so he was serving the Lord. And in 1969, he got filled with the power of God. And all I can remember of his life is that he genuinely lived everything that he said he believed. He would tell me things like prayer works, but he didn't just mean prayer works if you pray over your Pop-Tart and your cereal. He meant prayer work, that if your car wouldn't start, you could lay hands on your car and the car would start. If the toilet wouldn't flush, you could pray over the toilet and the toilet would flush. You could pray over the dishwasher and the dishwasher would work. If the dog was sick, you could pray over the dog and the dog would get well. If a kid was flunking school, he could pray over his kid and his kid would understand how to do math. I would say that it was almost a farce if I was just standing up here trying to tell a story, but it wasn't a farce because I lived it. I watched the power of God in my life as a child. And I got to watch it through a human being. I got to watch it through my father's legacy. My testimony of my own earthly father is I've never heard him raise his voice. I've never heard him curse. I've never seen him lose his temper. And if you know my mother, you know that's a miracle. And legit, you would almost think I'm just making it up for a sermon, but it was my life. It was my life to watch him press into God and to read the Word and to always lead me to the Word, to always take me to places of faith, to let me ride on his shoulders. When I wanted to quit, when I wanted to give up, when my life fell apart, he was there. When my first wife was killed by a drunk driver, my earthly father was there. He was not on some drunk. He was not on a binge. He was still there with his faith with God when I had to bury Monica. He was at my wedding with Robin. He united us together in the Lord. He's been there for the birth of my grandchildren, now his great-grandchildren. And the most interesting thing is that his legacy at 87 is the same as it was at 69 in 1969. He'll share, I'm sure, his story tomorrow, but as I'm thinking about this, because this year he's 87, I assume he understands his life is coming to a close because he's met with me and my brother. And he said to me and my brother, your mother and I have bought burial plots across town if you want to go see them. I'm like, no, I don't want to. He said, they already have our name on it. And all you fellas boys have to do is when we die is just put the date of our death. I'm like, Dad, that's so morbid. I don't want to think that way. You're alive. I'm bringing you donuts every week. You're good. You still eat hamburgers at Longhorn. You still golf every week. You walk a mile a day. In 2013, I moved up with my wife, and my dad had started this church in 1990. It was up at 23 years old, and he turned the legacy of this church over to his son. When he handed it to me, he handed me 12 acres of land and a building that was totally debt-free. He had worked over 23 years. When he first started this corner, there were 2 people. There was a man named James that used to sit on the front row. The brother could smoke more cigarettes than Satan himself. He was gifted at smoking cigarettes. It was a spiritual gift. I would say it was carnal, but he smoked so much it had to be a gift of God. And you could smell him coming in the foyer. He'd pull up and you'd go, James is here. How do you know? You could smell him. He smoked so much he could barely make it through a Wednesday service without having to go out and smoke, but he was the only one here, so he was obligated to stay. Literally, I would watch my father preach his guts out to my mother and James on the front row because he had a passion to do the kingdom of God. I wonder how much staying power us men would have had to show up with only 2 people. I wonder if our ego would have let us show up in 1990 and preach our guts out to 2 people. But he did it. He bought the property. He paid it off. It was debt-free. And in 2013, he handed the baton to me, which was a daunting task for me because I thought, I don't want to fail. I've been riding on your shoulders. You've been a good father. You've taught me well. You've told me how to deal with life. You've helped me through my problems. You've been a wonderful legacy for me. If one thing I can say about him, and I've told him, is that when I lay him to rest, he will have left me good footprints to follow to Jesus. And yeah, right. That's one of our family jokes. I ain't dead yet. And so the building that he turned over, we were using it well, and the roof started caving in, and I went to him and said, Dad, we're going to have to build a new building. And I said, you handed it to me debt-free, and it's going to cost us over $1 million to redo this building and build that building. And I had this overwhelming, what if I fail? What if I blow it? And I'll never forget, he was sitting in his office. I was in there talking to him, and he said, son, every man has to walk by faith and trust the Lord. Son, if you're not willing to fail, you will never walk by faith. If you're not willing to fail, you will never walk by faith. It tells me something of that about God, because as a human, you'll never figure God out. He's always a step ahead of you. I was in my 20s living in Statesboro, Georgia, and I was a youth pastor, and Dad was pastoring, and I went into his office and I said, oh man, I would love to win the lotto. Back then, a big lotto was $1 million, and there was $1 million lotto. And I said, oh man, I'd love to win $1 million lotto, what I could do with it. And without even blinking an eye, he said, well, I'll tell you what you'd do with it. And I was like, lay it on me, because if I win $1 million, he said, I'll tell you what you'll do. If you win $1 million, God will ask you to do something that costs $1,100,000. Because God never wants you relying on yourself. I didn't want to hear that when I was 20 years old. That I would never in my life get to a place that I would not be required to rely on God. It's every man's ego to keep God in the hip pocket for a rainy day. I'm going to live my life Shiloh. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do me. And I keep God right back here just in case things go bad. And if they do, I pull it out and rub my little magic lamp and I ask him to perform for me. And if he doesn't perform like I want him to perform, I get ticked off and think, well, he's probably not a real God. He probably doesn't love me. He's probably not there. And then I get all bothered, and then I become a victim, and then I throw a pity party, and then I quit going to church, and then my flesh takes over. And before you know it, I'm no longer living a legacy of godliness. Oh, it wasn't the devil that took me out. It was my own ego. I don't want to be in a place where I'm forced to trust God. I don't want to have to wake up and be relying on him all the time. As a billionaire businessman said years ago, he said, Christianity is nothing more than a crutch for weak people. Because we have to go to this God to try to save and help us. But I don't see that as weakness. I don't see me going to God as weakness. I see it me going to Him because He has greater things than I can accomplish on my own. He has things that He knows for my future that I myself don't even know. And so we took a big step of faith and we built this building and we started moving forward. And still at 87 years old, every Sunday, every Wednesday, my father and my mother sit on the row and cheer me on. Leaving me what I've come to this weekend to call it a godly legacy. You may not have an 87-year-old father that did that for you, but you can be that for yourself. That's right. You can become that tonight. You may not even have children yet, but you can become the father that leaves a godly legacy behind. That your grandchildren look up to you. That my daughters tell me, I would love to marry a man like Pops. That you could have such a life that your grandchildren would want to marry a man that would be just like you. You don't have to believe the lie of the world. And I was talking to Phil and I said, I think what I want to talk about this year is godly legacy. Because it's very meaningful to me now as I get older. I'm 58. A godly legacy. You'll hear from Pastor David McClendon tomorrow. He and I go all the way back to the mid-1980s together. We have wonderful stories together. We've been through battles together. We've been through hard times together. When I fell apart, he was there for me. We've encouraged each other. My prayer is that when he's 90 and I'm 90, we'll look at our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren serving the Lord. And tonight I stood over there behind David and I was singing and I was watching my son-in-law sing. I was watching David's son sing. And I'm thinking, here's two fellas that have a godly legacy. And I'm sure there's times in his life, maybe he'll tell you tomorrow when he teaches, but I'm sure there are times in his life where he thought, screw this, it's not worth it. Church, religion, people. I think he's going to introduce a book to you tomorrow about church hurt. Been hurt, disillusioned. There have been times I thought, I'll just throw in the towel, it's not worth it. It's not going the way I want it to go. I'm not where I thought I would be by 58. I said that to Robin, my wife, a few years ago. I was thinking about my life and I said, what I thought about myself in my 20s, I'm nowhere close to what I thought I would be doing by 60, but I've never been more content and more certain that I'm doing exactly what God wants me to do. I told you I'm 58. I have 4 daughters. I have worked hard to live a legacy so that my daughters are in love with God themselves. All 4 of my daughters show up every Sunday and they worship God. They serve the Lord. They've married godly men. And you may say, well, that's lucky. I don't know, how did you get so lucky? I say, luck. There's not a bit of luck to that at all. It's because it's slowing down from a godly legacy of my mother and father, and on this side of life, a godly legacy of Robin's mother and father. We have 4 people who gave us a godly legacy. And now Robin and I stand as a godly legacy. And I turn around to my 4 children and now they see me and their mother living for Jesus. But through us, they see 2 sets of grandparents still living for Jesus. And there's no way watching through the generations from age 17 to age 87. My father is 70 years older than my youngest daughter. And when my youngest daughter looks to life, she looks through her daddy and she sees right to her grandfather and her other grandfather on Robin's side. And there's no denying it must pay to serve God. What is the point of a godly legacy, fellas? It's to prove to the next generation that it pays to serve God. We have to make the generation jealous that it pays to serve the Lord. This asinine idea that it doesn't pay to serve God. It pays to work yourself into the grave. It pays to give 80 hours a week to the world. It pays to give your soul to the world, your mind to the world, your flesh to the world, your energy to the world, because we lost sight that it pays to serve God. You're going to reap what you sow. So I would say it's not luck. And you may be in a screwed up place right now. I don't have that daddy. I don't have that mama. I'm just coming off a drunk from a month ago. I'm at the lowest of low. All right, suck it up. Put your feet in the ground and go from this night forward. I'm going to become a godly legacy. And no hell of my past is going to follow me forward. And I don't care what kind of crap I've done in the past. Tonight, my feet go in the ground. I'm planting my life, and I'm going to be a godly legacy. And when they put me in the ground, they will say of me that his God was a faithful God, and he never turned his back on his God. A godly legacy. And yet, church today, religion today, is filled with disillusioned people who are nothing more than victims of some circumstantial evidence that's pissed them off. I don't like the preacher. I don't like the music. I don't like this. I don't like religion. And do you think that the kids following us want that? So this moment of a godly legacy is not a sermon. It's something I'm attempting to live. Speaking of Pastor David, in 2010, we were working together in ministry. We were pastoring together, and my life literally fell apart. I mean, in 42 days, of October of 2010 to December 31st of 2010, I went through the worst hell of any hell a human could go, in my opinion. And I blew it. I found myself in a hotel with a woman. I did things in the hotel with another woman that wasn't my wife, that I didn't even know her. I was so embarrassed. I woke up the next morning. What the hell have I done? I'm quitting. I came out of ministry. I repented, but I backed away. I resigned from the churches. Thank God for Pastor David. He took the church forward. And I was just in a place of, I've blown it. I've screwed up. I was such a good man until that one moment, and then I blew it, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get out of that hole. I don't know, but I want to tell you something, fellas. My daughters were ticked. My wife was ticked. I lived 4 months in my parents' basement because my wife said, you need to go get your life right. And that man sitting right there allowed his grown son to come stay in his basement because I was broken. But he didn't cuss me out, chew me out. I would sit with him at the breakfast table in the morning, and he would say, did God speak to you yet? No, sir. He will one day. The next day, well, has the Lord spoken to you yet? No, sir. He will. Keep listening. We did that from January to April. And every time I answered the same way, no, sir, because I didn't believe God could speak to me because I had disappointed him. I didn't believe that God, I don't even know if I wanted God to speak to me because I didn't want to know what he would say. I didn't want to hear his voice. I had already resonated in my soul that I would never preach again and I would never talk about God again. I would just be a good little Christian boy and hopefully die and go to heaven, and I'll mind my own business and I'm going to become a fireman. That's kind of what I landed on. And one day he said to me at the breakfast table, has the Lord spoken anything? Woo. I said, yes, sir. He said, what did he tell you? And I said, well, I was reading a scripture. I'm going to back up a minute to make this understandable. I don't know why God chose me to preach. It was not something I would have longed to do. But I felt in my heart that this is what he wanted me to do with my life, so I raised my hand and said, okay, I'll do it. But I'm not that talented of studying the Bible, like my mind, the way my mind works to try to teach and do the Bible. And so it was very frustrating to try to stand in front of people and talk about God in the early years. And I was crying out to him one day, like, I can't do this. I can't get scriptures like my mother. I can't put it all together and like all these preachers put it together. I just don't get it. I want to get it. And the Lord said, Mark, all I want you to do is stand up and I want you to talk to people about me. I want you to connect people to me. And I want you to use your personality to do it. And I don't know what that would have meant to you, but I went to preach that week, and I opened up my Bible, and when I did, it literally is still this way today. I can open the Bible, and as soon as I open it, words come out. I see words come off the page like they're living. And as they're coming off the page, I can put it together and draw lines and connect dots all over. I don't know why God gifted me that way. You could tell me you're preaching tomorrow for 2 hours and not even tell me, hand me a Bible. I can open it up and it just starts coming. And that's the way I had been living. And then when I fell apart, nothing would come. I would open the Bible, nothing. I saw no words jumping off the page. It was just dead. The reading of it was dead. I don't know if it was me. I don't know what it was. So when he would ask me, what is the Lord telling you? There was this frustration of nothing. But that morning, what is God showing you? And I said something, because that day I opened the Bible and I saw the words pop. And I remember how it made me feel. It gave me hope again. Because remember, my wife's mad, my daughters are mad, but it doesn't matter how hellacious life gets. If you will just keep digging and keep reading and keep staying in the game, have somebody in your life every day say, what is God telling you today, son? Nothing today. Come back tomorrow, we'll ask the same question. What's God telling you today? What's God telling you today? Because the expectation of a godly legacy is God needs to be telling you something. He needs to be speaking something to you. He's not a dead God, Mark. He's a living God. And here I sit now. It's been 2010, 13 years later. David is still in the game with me. I'm still in the game with him. Both of us attempting to be godly legacies. I put my feet back in the ground and said, God, man, if you can restore an old broken boy, I don't know if I would choose me. I don't know if I would pick me, but if you want to, I will say yes again. And however you want to use me, you use me. You need to use me in the world. I'm ready. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I put my feet back down into a godly legacy, and I held firm. I'm not going to let my failure cause me to become a victim that causes me to lose my godly legacy, that causes me to lose my children, that causes my grandchildren not even to know who God is because I quit on him. Was it easy? No. I had to cry some. I had to press in. I had to have people around me to encourage me. But today, I can stand and say, my children serve the Lord, my grandchildren serve the Lord, my son-in-laws serve the Lord. And one day I hope, my prayer is that I'll be 87 sitting on the chair and my legacy will be serving the Lord. And I'll still be in the game. There's a scripture in Genesis 25. Abraham lived 175 years and he died at a ripe old age. How many of you would like to get to a ripe old age? I don't even know what that would be. I mean, ripe old age. Like, I'm thinking a good 101 would be good. But he didn't get to a ripe old age, some bitter, washed up, mad, angry, hellacious man. He got there satisfied. And I started telling the Lord, that's the way I want to live. I want to get to the end of my life and go, I'm satisfied. Because I've gone through my 40s where I was not satisfied. That's your crisis moment, right? Midlife crisis. You're buying sport cars and motorcycles and wondering if your life has amounted to anything. And then you realize you buy the motorcycle and 2 years later it's old and it didn't do what you thought it would do. You had an affair, it didn't work. You picked up an addiction, it didn't work. You had habits that didn't work. And now you're getting older and you're realizing, because we're all truly grasping for a satisfied life. It is the core of every human. We desire to be satisfied, whether that's sexually, emotionally, whether it's through alcohol, through drugs, whether it's through pornography, whether it's through friendships, whether it's through pizza, whether it's through beer. All humans are looking to find that thing there satisfies me. It's the nature of humans to be satisfied. Even those that commit murder, it was satisfying because they angered me and I ended the anger by taking their life. It's a weird backward satisfaction. It's to go in Netflix and see the documentaries of serial killers and think, how can anybody be satisfied taking the life of another human being? But it tells us something in the deep core of all humans. All of us need something that touches the soul that can satisfy us. And in this room right now, if we took a poll, there's going to be 100 different answers to this question. What is it that satisfies you, Mark? What is it that you're hunting for, son? How long are you going to chase yourself? How long are you going to trust your addictions? How long are you going to keep making excuses? How long are you going to keep throwing your little pity party? How long are you going to say it's your wife's fault? It's your boss's fault. It's your ex's fault. It's your stupid decisions of the last 10 years' fault. It's always somebody. It's Joe Biden's fault. No, it's Trump's fault. It's always somebody's fault of why I'm not satisfied. And I will say this about the world, there are some really wonderfully satisfying things out there. It's just once the buzz is gone, life sucks. You'll find the buzz, but once it leaves you, it craves for more. So if it's a satisfaction that is not coming from the right place, it always says more. More. I need more. It is the nature of pornography. You start out with girls in yoga pants, and before you know it, you're at the worst of perversion because it always has to feed you more to satisfy you. What satisfied you a year ago in pornography no longer satisfied. It's the drug addiction. It's the first hit of Coke. I was counseling a guy a few weeks ago, and he's, was telling me the first time at 15 when he took the hit of Coke, what it did to him. It ignited his life on fire. And he just could not think but anything but I've got to hit it again. I've got to hit it again. Except now he's an adult and it's ruined his life. Because it never says enough. It always leaves you desiring more. So now we come to this thing called godly legacy. And let me ask you, when was the last time you had enough of God? When was the last time you woke up and thought, I need more of Him? Are you satisfied with one Bible verse a week? Are you satisfied with a 5-minute devotion? Does that satisfy you? Does it satisfy you for 40 minutes on a Sunday to check the box of religion and go, I did it? Because what I find in my life about God, the more you spend with Him, the more you want to spend with Him. And the more you press into Him, the more you want to keep pressing into Him. And the enemy knows that that is true. He knows that if you start the process of seeking God, you will get so touched by God that you'll become addicted to God. And when you're addicted to God, always pressing into God, your life just begins to flourish. And you become a raging testimony of favor and blessing and grace. And people start asking, what's happened in your life? I dare say many men today are addicted to God. We're addicted to our egos, to ourselves, to our jobs, to our money, to our sports teams, to our habits, to our hobbies. Sit for 9 hours playing video games and give God 6 minutes of a week. Working 60 hours bragging that we did it, but at the end of the week, we give God the leftover 2 minutes. And want to know why life isn't working, why my marriage is broken, why my kids why aren't they doing well? And maybe the answer is not the devil. Maybe the answer is it the tree that your wife is connected to and the tree that your children are connected to is a tree that has rotten roots. So the fruit is connected to the roots of rottenness in the father in the home. So I have to begin to ask myself, do I want to end this way? Do you believe you could? Our world is so screwed up now. We live such fearful, anxious lives. The next pandemic, the interest rates, everything, the gas is so high. Do you really believe that you could grow old and your testimony could be you could die at a ripe old age, but when they bury you, there's not one thing you regret. When they lay you in the ground, you've lived to the fullest. You have nothing else to accomplish. Your children serve the Lord. Your marriage has been wonderful. Your grandkids are there serving the Lord, and they lay you in the ground because you became a godly legacy on September the 8th, 2023. And you never looked back. But I've discovered why that doesn't always appeal to people. And the discovery is in the purple. He breathed his last and joined his ancestors in death. Now, this to me is a morbid thought if you don't know God. Because few of us, I dare say, woke up today thinking, what will my life be like when I breathe my last breath? I would say I would put a high bet on it that nobody woke up thinking that. We're not conditioned to think my last breath. We're conditioned to think my next breath. The next job, the next raise, the next girl, the next opportunity. I live for the moment of my breath right now, the thing that satisfies me, the thing that moves me, the thing that I'm lustful for. And so I'm giving all of my breath to this momentary thing called life in the moment, rarely waking up thinking that everybody in this room, if Jesus doesn't come, there will be a day where hopefully your children and grandchildren are standing around you, watching you breathe the final breath on planet Earth. And at that moment of breathing your last, when every habit is dead, every fear is gone, every anxiety, there are no more bills you have to pay, you've accomplished life on earth. And perhaps if it's a good life, they'll cry over you, they'll miss you. The goal is not have them applaud. Thank God he's gone. The goal is that when you breathe your last, you would be able to say, I don't need another because I've accomplished everything God wanted me to accomplish. is to someone who dies by suicide. They breathe their last because they were hopeless, but you don't have to get to your last breath hopeless. What will it look like when you get there? What do you want to be said of you? I often say the most tragic thing we do is celebrate people after they're dead. We bury them and then we all come to the funeral. I just want to say that Daddy was a good daddy. I just love Daddy. Offer a beer for Daddy. He's a good man. I was going to miss you, Daddy. And I'm like, why didn't you say this while they were living? Why do you have to wait to the last breath before you appreciate? Are you going to wait to your last breath before you appreciate what God is offering you tonight? He's offering you an opportunity to grow old with a satisfying life. He just needs to know, will you trust Him? Will you hold on to Him? Will you get to the last breath and breathe in? And when you do, go, I have lived to the fullness of everything God wanted me to do. I wasted nothing of my life. I got with God and I gave Him all I had in everything I did. I gave it over to Him. It's all yours, God. And so this has been resonating in my soul for a long time. And by long, I mean for months of asking the question. And what I want to do in the next night, tomorrow night, is I want to take you on a journey of getting to a place that when you breathe your last, you've left a legacy that's worth living. With no regret. Oh, you may have earned some scars along the way. You may have had some failures along the way. But your marriage, your life, your children, your grandchildren will look at you and say, there is a man of God. I know Jesus because of them. I trust God because of them. Now, you may already be in a place where failures hit you. You may be in a place like me that's looking at the Bible going, I don't think so. You may have already felt like the failure's so big there's no getting it back. It's a lie. It's a lie from the pit of hell. If you're breathing, there's hope. And if you just breathe the second breath, it's not your last one yet. And if you hadn't hit your last breath yet, there's still hope I can die a ripe old age. I can put my feet in the ground and say, God, do with me whatever you want to do with me. I'm yours. My money's yours. My business is yours. My emotions are yours. Everything I have is yours. I just want to wake up and I just want to, here's the thought. I just want to be satisfied by you. Well, this is what I want to leave you with. 3 years ago, it was 2020. My wife and daughters drink coffee like that's what they're going to be doing for eternity. It's just, I don't even know how they like it. It's just doo-doo water. It's just nasty. I don't even know. It's like, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. The reason I say that is when I was a kid, my mother drank coffee, but she drank black coffee, hot black coffee. She liked it bubbling hot coffee. And I was a little kid and she was drinking. I said, Mom, what's that? She said, that's my coffee. And she didn't cheat like these women today, these little cheap men and women. Oh, she put nothing in it. No sugar, no cream. Just tar. Just black tar. Looked like a Black Panther. Just tar. And so she said, would you like to try some? Well, of course. I'm your kid. You're my mother. That has to be good if you're drinking it. And I drank it, and literally I felt that I had been dropped into a boiling toilet. It was, I'm not even joking, it was the most god-awful, terrible, bitter, like just, you gotta be kidding me. Ugh. And so that was so powerful. As a little kid, I swore off coffee till Jesus' second coming. I will never drink coffee, and I didn't. That was probably age 5. So from age 5, which would be 1970, until 2020. That's 50 years. Ain't no way. My girls would beg me, Daddy, just go get coffee with us. Girls, I'm not drinking that. That's Satan's juice. There's no way. I hate it. I don't know how y'all like. Well, you just got to get cream and whipped cream and vanilla and oat milk. I said, girls, that ain't coffee. You want coffee, go talk to grandmama. That's coffee. It's tar. It's nasty. You girls drink sissy stuff. That's not even real coffee. They're tricking you. They're telling you it's coffee and charging you $9. It ain't coffee. You drink the real coffee, you'll have diarrhea for a week. That's the kind of coffee I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're constipated, take a sip of grandmama's and you'll be on the toilet for a month kind of coffee. Oh, Daddy, for years. Oh, Daddy, they're all grown. Daddy, go with us. Go into Atlanta. There's great coffee shops. And the reason now I know they wanted me to go, they wanted me to pay. They didn't care if I drank. They just, so I would go. Well, I finally ask my girls every year, tell me something you want me to do to be a better man. I do that every year. I challenge you on it. Be careful because you never know what they'll say. But I do that every year. I sit the ones that are home, tell me what I can do to be a better father or a better man this year. And they'll tell me something, and I attempt to do that. I've done it for a long time. So this year, my youngest daughter said, I just want you to learn to like coffee. God almighty. God, stupid. That's the dumbest request ever. Get thee behind me, Satan. Why don't you ask something important? But she wanted me to drink coffee with her. So I sucked it up. I'm like, oh. So I thought, if I'm going to go out in style. I'm going all the way back to my childhood, and I'm going raw and black. As black can be. So where do you go for that kind of coffee? I asked Ryan, who was with me. He said, go to Dunkin' Donuts. They have the best. I was like, well, I'll try that. So my very first cup of coffee in 50 years was from Dunkin' Donuts on Fairburn Road. I literally thought I would die. I thought, my God, this is terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth. I'm not going to make it. There's no way I can do this. I won't. And then my daughters are like, Dunkin', you needed to do Starbucks. So I thought, I'll try Starbucks. I tried Starbucks. The best I could tell you was a wet ashtray. It was just like, oh my God. Y'all pay $9 to lick a wet ashtray? There's no way. Like, it was just the most god-awful, but I thought, my daughter wants me to do it. I got this. I can do it. But I started noticing something. All these coffee shops that charge me $9, $8, $7, their coffee looked more like a Hispanic person. It was sort of golden brown. My mother, her coffee literally looked like somebody had been dumped into a tar pit and pulled up. I thought, that's the kind of coffee I want. I want it so black, you can't even see beyond 2 inches from the top. So I went and found me a dark roast coffee. I went home and made it. And as it's coming out, I'm thinking, that's like my mother. And I drank it. I was on the toilet for about an hour. But I thought, that reminds me of mother. I woke up the next day. I made it the next day and the next day. I started becoming, it's weird. I hated it January, February. By March, I'm walking down the aisles of Publix. Robin's like, what are you doing? I'm like, looking for the coffee. What are you looking for? I'm looking for a dark roast organic from the mountains of Guatemala with a single source bean. Like, that's how addicted I was. I'm looking for a single source bean from the mountains of Guatemala because those beans that are grown high on the mountain have a better taste than the beans that are grown low. Like, it took me 3 months to become an addict. I went from hating it, loathing it, never, to every morning I wake up, I brew it at night. I put it in the fridge. It comes out looking like Coca-Cola. It's so black dark. I dump it in. The dogs are looking at me like, really? I'm like, yes. And then I let my friends taste it. And they're like, oh my God, that's horrible. And I'm like, no, that's the best coffee ever. Do you know how I got there? I got there because I decided to make a change to realize that if I would just keep pressing on, I would fall in love with the very thing I no longer loved. I just had to wake up and choose it every day and press through the thoughts and the opinions of every human that found out I was drinking it, that told me where the best coffee in the world was. I had to press through the opinions. But now I've been doing that every morning since 2020. I wake up, I don't know how much coffee that is, 3 years, every single day. I wake up, I pour my Black Rifle 32-ounce mug of chocolate black coffee. I drink it cold, and I love it every day. Oh, don't go, ooh, if you've never done it. But do you know what? I learned to fall in love with something. I think maybe that's why so many men don't have a godly legacy. They've never spent time with Him long enough to fall in love with Him. They have bitter memories of God. They don't wake up wanting more of Him. They have memories of what happened to them in the past with God, of what a preacher did, a mother did, a father did, a church person did. So they have bitter memories and they don't want anything to do with it, but they're trying to have a satisfied life. But you can't have a satisfied life if you don't wake up every day. You can't have a godly legacy if you don't wake up every day and go, God, today, let me drink of you. Let me spend time with you. Let me taste and see that the Lord is good. For if I taste your goodness every day, it won't be long. I'll become addicted to your goodness. I'll become addicted to hearing your voice, addicted to knowing your sound, addicted to knowing how you think and how you walk and what you're doing. And I'll wake up every day with you, God, and go, today, Lord, let me and you be one with one another. And what used to be bitter to my soul, let it become sweet now. And let me go to bed thinking about it. And let me wake up and make effort toward it. And let me walk around with you in my hand and my heart every day, because I want to leave a legacy. And if I could do that with coffee, could I not do it with God? Fellas, you can't leave a godly legacy if you don't spend time with Him. You can't have a godly legacy if you're distracted by everything else. You won't have a godly legacy if you have bitter memories of what you think God was like. You have to taste and see that He's good. Bow your head if you will. Do you want a satisfied life? God gives you an option to chase after it yourself. You can burn the candle. You can wear yourself out. You can do your best to get to the end of life, and hopefully you're healthy. Hopefully you're not sick. Hopefully you hadn't wasted all your money on medical bills. And hopefully you're still married to the same woman. Hopefully your kids love you. Hopefully they'll call you. Hopefully they'll talk to you. Do you want to just become like the world? Live with your fingers crossed? Or do you want to put your feet in the ground and go, I don't know what all's happened up into the day, but today I'm putting my feet into the ground of God. And as a man, I'm going to wake up with Him every day. I'm going to become addicted to Him. And everywhere I go, if I go to work, if I go to do my hobbies, if I go to the lake, if I go hunting, if I go to sporting events, whatever it is I do, I pray that I do it addicted to Him. I pray that everywhere I go, they will see Him in my hands and in my heart. And I may offer Him to other people and they may think, no, that's bitter. I don't want to drink from that. But I'm going to keep drinking from it. I'm going to keep holding on to it because I want to know You. I want to commune with You. I want to taste of You. And fellas, I'll tell you something about God. Sometimes that first drink of Him is bitter because it touches your flesh. It touches things you have to let go of. It touches the lust and says, you can't do that anymore, Mark. You got to let go. So sometimes that first drink of God's Spirit is he touches an area of your life that he says this area has to go, and so it feels very bitter at first. But the more you wake up with him and the more you talk to him and the more you, as simple as it sounds, stay in the Bible, read the Bible. Oh man, every day you wake up, it gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. And suddenly you've become addicted to God. And suddenly you're satisfied and you're at a ripe old age. You have no regret. And your granddaughter walks up to you and says, "Papa, what's that?" And you start telling her the story of that scar. Because you'll be full of memories of what life has done to you. You'll be full of memories of the journey called life. You'll have stories of good days and bad days and sad days and happy days. But at the end, your testimony will be, "But he's been faithful to me." Fellas, that is the kind of men we need for our generation. We need some men tonight that will start drinking of God. You're not addicted to him. You don't miss him. He wants to spend time with you. He wants to know you. He wants to talk with you. He wants to commune with you, go to work with you, wake up with you, go to bed with you. He wants to indwell you. And if you will just start tonight, every morning or night, whatever works for you, for me it's nighttime, I'm going to spend time with him. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to read the Bible. I'm going to ask him to talk to me. And when I fail, I'm going to keep my feet in the ground and keep pressing into him. And when I want to quit, and when I wonder, where is he? I'm going to wake up every day and say, "God, I'm here." Now, fellas, as I get ready to let you go, what is it in your life that's causing you to miss sight of your last breath? Because your last breath will be a compilation of the decisions you make as you breathe. You can't cheat it. You can't fake it. Your final breath will be a compilation of all the other breaths. And if you spend those breaths chasing yourself, your lust, your selfish behaviors, your anger, your money, then at the end of your life, your last breath will be your behaviors, your lust, and your money. But if you'll change that breath tonight, keep the job, keep going after things you love to do, but as you do it, could every breath you breathe be intentionally for God? Could you wake up in the morning and say, "God, every breath is for you today. I'm going to be on my job today, but as I'm breathing, every breath is yours. I'm going to use my breath to speak life. I'm going to use my breath to speak hope." Father, I bless the men tonight. I pray as they go home, as they go back to their hotels, that they would think on this, that there's coming a day when they breathe their last, and my prayer is that they would choose to leave a legacy of godliness behind. Not victimhood, lust, trouble, fear, anxiety. I pray over the next day for Pastor David, Faxon, and McClendon, for Dad, that you would give all these men a word of the Lord for us, to help us be godly men of legacy, to teach us how to press on, to teach us how to drink even when it seems bitter, to teach us how to press on, to teach us how to become addicted to you and not ourselves. Thank you, Father. Lord, I bless our fellowship now. I bless the food that we're about to partake of, that we would take out of this moment a word of the Lord for our heart and grow from it in Jesus' name. And can you say amen? Stand up with me, if you will, fellas, and give the Lord a shout of praise. I hope